catalogued. Every warship design, every weapons system, every tactical doctrine developed over 10,000 years of human conflict. It is all still there, stored in databases that the Accord does not even know exist. How long to bring it back? Kevin asked. Paul smiled, and there was something cold in that smile. The manufacturing systems can be converted in 48 hours. We hid them in plain sight, disguised as civilian factories. One small software update, and they will start producing things that would give the elder species nightmares. What about personnel? Maria asked. We cannot fight a war with civilians. That is where it gets interesting, Paul replied. He pulled up another display showing statistics and graphs. When we joined the Accord, we agreed to abandon our military traditions. No more armies. No more combat training. No more war games. He paused, letting the words sink in. So we changed the names. Combat training became competitive sports. Tactical education became strategic gaming. War simulations became entertainment software. For 300 years, every human child has been learning how to fight without ever knowing that is what they were doing. Kevin stared at the data. Are you telling me that our entire population has been secretly trained for war? Not secretly, Paul said. Openly. We just called it something else. The average human teenager has spent thousands of hours practicing decision-making under pressure, resource management, team coordination, and strategic thinking. They think they were playing games. They were actually preparing for this moment. Maria shook her head slowly. The muscle memory of war never left us. We just dressed it up in different clothes. Kevin stood and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the stars that humanity had called home for 3 centuries. Peaceful stars. Safe stars. Stars that were now threatened by an enemy that believed nothing could stop them. Send the activation codes, he said quietly. Wake up the sleeping giant. Paul nodded and began typing commands into his console. Across 17 star systems, encrypted messages began flowing through channels that had been silent for generations. Hidden systems came online. Sealed databases opened. People who had lived their entire lives in peace suddenly found themselves remembering skills they never knew they had. Maria watched the process with a mixture of pride and sadness. The Kethvari have conquered hundreds of civilizations, she said. They have never lost a war. They believe they are invincible. They have never fought humans, Kevin replied. No, they have fought the peaceful humans, the kind humans, the humans who chose to be good neighbors. Maria turned to face him, and her eyes were hard as stone. They have not yet met the other humans, the ones we buried, the ones who built weapons capable of destroying planets, the ones who survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed billions, the ones who looked at the void of space and decided to conquer it. Kevin nodded. Then let us introduce them. On the display, the status indicators began changing. Factories that had produced civilian goods for centuries suddenly shifted their production lines. Scientists who had studied theoretical physics quietly began working on very practical applications. Athletes and gamers found themselves receiving notifications that their skills were needed for something more important than entertainment. The transformation was quiet at first. There were no dramatic announcements, no public declarations of war. Humanity simply began to change. Like a person waking from a long sleep and remembering who they truly were, Paul looked up from his console. The first wave of conversions is complete. We will have functional warships within 72 hours. The elder species will not believe their eyes. Kevin allowed himself a small smile. The elder species maintained peace for 100,000 years. They forgot what war looks like. They forgot that some species are not peaceful by nature. They forgot that the universe can be cruel and unforgiving. He turned back to the window, watching the stars. We never forgot. We just chose to be better. We chose peace and kindness and cooperation. We chose to raise our children in a galaxy without war. But choosing to be peaceful is not the same as being unable to fight. Maria joined him at the window. The Kethvari made a mistake. They thought they were attacking the Accord. They thought humanity was just another peaceful species, soft and weak and ready to be conquered. She put her hand on the glass, as if reaching out to touch the distant stars. They were wrong. They did not attack the Accord. They attacked our friends. They killed our friends. And now they are going to learn something that the galaxy forgot a long time ago. Kevin waited for her to continue. Humanity does not forgive, Maria said softly. And humanity never forgets. The message arrived at exactly midnight, local time, on every human world across 17 star systems. It appeared on personal devices, work terminals, public displays, and private screens. There was no sound, no alarm, just simple words in plain text that every human citizen received at the same moment. An option activated. Remember who you are. On the colony world of New Austin, schoolteacher named Greg Palmer was grading papers when the message appeared on his tablet. He stared at the words for a long moment, feeling something stirred deep inside his chest. It was a feeling he did not recognize at first, something that had been sleeping for so long that he had forgotten it existed. He set down his pen and walked to the closet in his bedroom. Behind the winter coats and old boxes, there was a case that he had not opened in decades. His hands trembled slightly as he entered the code. The lock clicked open, and inside he found a uniform. Dark fabric with silver trim. The insignia of a tactical operations specialist. Greg had worn this uniform 30 years ago. During what everyone called advanced training exercises, he had told himself they were just games, just simulations, just ways to stay sharp. Now he understood the truth. They had never stopped preparing for war. They had just convinced themselves they were doing something else. The uniform still fit perfectly across the planet. Similar scenes played out in millions of homes. People opened cases they had forgotten about. They found equipment that had been disguised as sports gear or hobby supplies. They remembered skills that had been hidden inside games and competitions. On the mining station series Gamma, shift supervisor Linda Torres was in the middle of a routine briefing when her personal device buzzed. She read the message and stopped speaking. Her coworkers watched in confusion as her expression changed, as something ancient and cold settled into her eyes. Linda. One of them asked, "Are you okay?" She looked up slowly. "I need to report to the flight deck. My designation has been activated." "Your what?" Linda did not answer. She was already walking toward the door, her movements suddenly more precise, more controlled. 20 years ago, she had been a pilot in simulation programs that were supposedly just entertainment. She had logged thousands of hours in combat scenarios. Always believing they were just games, her body remembered every hour. In research labs across human space, scientists received different messages. Their files contained detailed specifications for weapon systems that had been labeled theoretical for public records. They were anything but theoretical. Decades of quiet research had continued in the background, always ready for the day when it might be needed. Dr. Carol Webb had spent her career studying energy physics for civilian applications. At least that was what her official biography said. The truth was that every discovery she made had two applications, one for peace and one for war. She had always known this, deep down, but she had never allowed herself to think about it directly. Now she thought about it. Now she remembered the weapons designs she had accidentally created while working on power systems. Now she understood why her research had always received such generous funding. She picked up her tablet and began reviewing the sealed files. Within hours, her laboratory would be producing things that the Kethvari could not imagine. The elder species of the Accord watched these changes with growing confusion. Ambassador Telek of the Vorn had requested permission to observe the human mobilization, and what he saw disturbed him deeply. He had expected something dramatic. Military parades, perhaps, or emotional speeches. Instead, he watched humanity transform in near silence. Factories shifted production without fanfare. Citizens reported 2 new assignments without complaint. Ships were retrofitted with weapons that seemed to appear from nowhere. How is this possible? Telek asked his aide, a young Vorn named Selik, who had studied human history. They have been peaceful for 300 years. How can they mobilize so quickly? Selik chose his words carefully. Ambassador, I believe we made an error in our understanding of humans. We thought they had become peaceful. We thought they had abandoned their warrior nature. Had they not? They had chosen to be peaceful, Selleck said. That is different from being unable to fight. Humans did not lose their capacity for violence. They suppressed it. They channeled it into other activities. They taught their children to compete fiercely in sports and games, never admitting that they were training the next generation of soldiers. Telek watched a group of humans working on a ship that had been a cargo vessel yesterday. Today, it bristled with weapons. They deceived us. No, Ambassador, they deceived themselves. They wanted so badly to be peaceful that they convinced themselves they were. But underneath that desire, the truth remained. Humans are predators. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. They survived ice ages, famines, diseases, and wars. They are the descendants of the most successful killers their planet ever produced. The ambassador was silent for a long moment, and we have released them. Yes, we have released them. And I do not think we can put them back. On the horizon's edge, Commander Lisa Grant watched her own crew undergo the transformation. Danny Vance, the cheerful young communications officer, was now reviewing tactical protocols with an intensity she had never seen in him before. Eddie Marsh, the helmsman who loved to tell jokes, was calibrating weapon systems with the precision of a surgeon. They were the same people they had always been, but they were also something more, something older, something that had been waiting inside them all along. "Commander," Danny said, looking up from his console, "I have been reviewing the sealed combat frequencies. I know how to coordinate fleet attacks. I do not know how I know this, but I do." Lisa nodded. "It is because you were always a warrior, Danny. You just did not know it." "Were you?" She thought about the question carefully. "Yes. I was always a warrior. But I was also always a peacemaker. The two are not opposites. The best warriors understand the value of peace. That is why they fight so hard to protect it." Outside the ship, the stars continued their ancient dance, indifferent to the chaos spreading across the galaxy. But the humans were not indifferent. They remembered what it meant to fight. They remembered what it meant to win. And they remembered what it meant to make their enemies regret ever threatening the people they loved. The giant was awake. The giant was angry. And the giant was coming. The Kethvari armada hung in space like a swarm of metal locusts. 300 warships, each one larger than anything the Accord had ever built, waited at the edge of the Nexus system. Their commander, a creature of chitin and fury named Krath, studied the tactical displays with satisfaction. The Nexus system was the heart of the Accord, 12 inhabited worlds. Trillions of beings. The greatest concentration of wealth and technology in the known galaxy. When it fell, the rest of the Accord would collapse within months. Krath had conquered 47 civilizations in his lifetime. He had never lost a battle. The soft species of the Accord were no different from all the others who had fallen before his fleet. They would beg for mercy, and he would grant them none. "Commander," one of his officers reported, "sensors detect a single vessel approaching our position." Krath turned his attention to the display. A tiny ship, barely a speck against the vastness of space, was moving directly toward his fleet. It was a human vessel, according to the registry. An exploration craft with minimal weapons. Send one ship against 300. Krath made a sound that passed for laughter among his species. "The humans are even more foolish than I believed. Did we destroy it? No. Let it approach. I want to see what message these creatures bring." Horizon's edge dropped out of faster-than-light travel in the center of the Kethvari formation. Commander Lisa Grant stood on her bridge, surrounded by her crew of 42 souls. Every one of them had volunteered for this mission. Every one of them knew they might not survive. Danny Vance looked up from his console. "They are targeting us, Commander. 117 weapon systems are locked on our position." Lisa nodded calmly. "Open a channel to the enemy flagship. Channel open." She stepped forward, facing the main screen that now showed the interior of a Kethvari bridge. The alien commander was massive, a nightmare of armored plates and sharp edges. His eyes glowed with a cold intelligence that had orchestrated the deaths of billions. "I am Commander Lisa Grant of the human vessel Horizon's Edge," she said, her voice steady. You have killed our friends. You have destroyed civilizations that we loved. You have threatened the home we have built over 3 centuries. Krath leaned forward, amused by this tiny creature that dared to address him. And what will you do about it, human? Beg for mercy? Offer tribute? Your species is weak. Your ships are toys. You are nothing, Lisa smiled. It was not a friendly smile. I am here to deliver a message. The Galactic Accord has authorized end option protocols. Humanity has been released from its restrictions. You wanted war with the Accord. Instead, you have awakened something far worse. Awakened what? Us. She turned to Danny. Send the signal. Behind the horizon's edge, space itself seemed to tear open. Ships emerged from faster-than-light travel, one after another, filling the void with metal and fire. Human warships, 5,000 of them. Each one bristling with weapons that had not existed 7 days ago. The tactical display on Krath's bridge exploded with warnings. His officers scrambled to make sense of what they were seeing. Where had these ships come from? How had the humans built a fleet of this size without anyone noticing? Lisa watched the enemy commander's expression change from amusement to confusion to something that might have been fear. You have conquered 47 civilizations, she said. You have never faced one that fought back with everything it had. You have never faced a species that spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing. She leaned closer to the screen. You have never faced humans. The battle began. Eddie Marsh threw the horizon's edge into a spinning dive that would have killed any other crew. But this was not any other crew. These were humans, descendants of warriors who had learned to fight in conditions that should have been impossible. Their bodies adapted. Their minds calculated. Their instincts guided them through maneuvers that the Kethvari could not predict. Lisa watched the tactical display as her fleet engaged the enemy. Human ships moved in patterns that seemed chaotic but were actually precisely coordinated. They anticipated enemy fire before it was launched. They exploited weaknesses that the Kethvari did not know they had. The first Kethvari warship exploded in a flash of light. Then another. Then 3 more. Krath screamed orders at his officers, but nothing they did seemed to work. The humans were everywhere, striking from impossible angles, disappearing before counterattacks could land. Their weapons carved through Kethvari armor like it was paper. How are they doing this? Krath demanded. These are the peaceful humans, the weak ones, the species that abandoned warfare. On the horizon's edge, Lisa heard his transmission over the open channel. She answered him. We did not abandon warfare. We chose to set it aside. We chose peace because we understood the alternative. We raised our children in safety because we knew what it meant to raise them in blood. We became good neighbors because we remembered what it was like to be terrible enemies. She paused as another Kethvari ship broke apart on the tactical display. You made us remember. You made us choose again. And we chose to fight. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it was over, 219 Kethvari ships were debris floating in the void. The rest were fleeing, their faster-than-light drives pushing them toward the edge of the system. The human fleet had lost 37 vessels. Each loss was felt deeply. Each crew mourned as heroes. But the victory was undeniable. Lisa watched the enemy retreat, feeling exhaustion settle into her bones. Around her, her crew worked in focused silence. Professionals who had discovered abilities they never knew they possessed. Danny looked up from his console. Admiral Cole is on the command channel, Commander. He wants to speak with you. Lisa activated the connection. Kevin Cole's face appeared on her screen, tired but triumphant. Commander Grant, outstanding work. You have just won the first human military victory in 300 years. It's the first of many, Admiral. The Kethvari will not stop because of one defeat. No, they will not. Which is why we need you too. Lead the counteroffensive. You have proven yourself today. The fleet needs commanders who understand what we are capable of. Lisa thought about the peaceful life she had lived before this day. The exploration missions, the diplomatic visits, the quiet satisfaction of helping rather than hurting. That life was over now. The galaxy had changed, and humanity had changed with it. "I will do what is necessary," she said. "Whatever it takes to protect our home." Kevin nodded. "That is all any of us can do." "Welcome back to the war, Commander. Humanity is counting on you." The channel closed. Lisa turned to face her crew, these people who had followed her into impossible danger and emerged victorious. "Get some rest," she ordered. "Tomorrow, we take the fight to them." The giant was awake. The giant had won its first battle, and the giant was just getting started. 3 years had passed since the day humanity was released. 3 years of battles, of victories, of losses that cut deep into the hearts of everyone who survived. The war had spread across 1,000 star systems, touching worlds that had known peace for centuries. Admiral Kevin Cole sat at a table in a neutral station, waiting for the enemy delegation to arrive. His uniform bore marks of rank that had not existed when this war began. His face showed lines of exhaustion that would never fully fade. He had sent good people to die in the name of survival, and that weight would stay with him forever. The door opened, and the HFY commander entered. Krath, the same creature who had dismissed humanity as weak and foolish 3 years ago, walked slowly to the opposite side of the table. His armor was scarred from battles he had barely survived. His eyes had lost their arrogant glow. Behind him came other HFY leaders, the remnants of a military that had once seemed invincible. Their invasion force was shattered. Their homeworlds were surrounded by human fleets. Their population faced extinction if the war continued. They had come to ask for peace. Krath sat down heavily, his massive form making the chair creak under his weight. He stared at Kevin for a long moment before speaking. "How?" The word came out harsh, bitter, confused. "How did you hide what you are for so long?" "We studied your species. We read your records. We saw peaceful explorers, friendly diplomats, gentle neighbors. We saw no threat." Kevin considered the question carefully. He thought about Lisa Grant, now an admiral herself, commanding the fleet that held the HFY homeworld at gunpoint. He thought about Danny Vance, who had become one of the most brilliant tactical minds humanity had ever produced. He thought about all the ordinary people who had discovered extraordinary abilities within themselves. "We did not hide what we are," Kevin said finally. "We became something different. For 300 years, we chose peace. We raised our children in peace. We built our entire society around the idea that cooperation was better than conflict. That was not a deception. That was who we genuinely wanted to be. But you were capable of this." Krath gestured vaguely at everything around them. "At the war that had destroyed his civilization's power, you had this violence inside you the whole time." "Yes, we did. And we will always have it inside us. That is the truth about humans that you never understood. We are not peaceful by nature. We chose peace because we understood the alternative. We experienced it. Our history is written in blood. We knew what we were capable of, and we decided to be better." Krath made a sound of frustration. "Then why? Why did you destroy us? If you love peace so much, why did you become monsters?" Kevin's eyes hardened. "You killed our friends, the Melody, the Harvest Collective, the children of the Amber Star, billions of lives. Erased because you believed no one could stop you. You threatened our home, our families, everything we had built." He leaned forward. "You became monsters because you left us no choice. You attacked everything we loved, and we responded in the only way we could. We protected our own. That is what humans do. That is what we have always done." The peace treaty was signed within the hour. The HFY agreed to withdraw beyond the charted regions, to surrender their remaining war fleet, and to never threaten the Accord again. In return, humanity would spare their homeworlds and allow their civilization to survive. It was not a generous peace. It was not a kind peace. But it was peace, and that was enough. 6 months later, Commander Lisa Grant stood in front of a small house on New Austin, watching the sun set over fields of golden wheat. She had retired from active duty, her service to humanity complete. The war was over. The galaxy was safe. life could begin again. Children played in the distance, their laughter carrying across the quiet evening air. They would grow up in a world without war, just as she had. They would learn peace and kindness and cooperation. They would become the best of what humanity could be. But they would also learn the truth. They would know what their ancestors had done when everything they loved was threatened. They would understand that peace was a choice, not a weakness, and that choosing peace required the strength to fight when necessary. A vehicle approached the house. An Ambassador Telek of the Vorn stepped out. He looked older than when Lisa had first met him, the weight of recent years visible in his movements. He walked slowly toward her and stopped a few feet away. "Admiral Grant," he said, "or should I say Commander. I understand you have retired." "Just Lisa now," she replied. "I am done with titles." Telek nodded. "I came to offer you something. The Council of Elders has voted to admit humanity to our ranks. Full membership, equal voice, recognition of everything you have done for the Accord. You would be the first human to sit among us." Lisa looked at him for a long moment. She thought about everything that had happened, everything she had seen, everything she had done. She thought about the person she had been before the war, and the person she had become. "Thank you," she said, "but I think humanity needs to decline that offer." Telek's expression showed surprise. "Decline? After everything you have accomplished? We spent 300 years trying to be peaceful. We spent 3 years proving we had not forgotten how to be dangerous. Now we need to find the balance between those two things. We are not ready to be elders, Ambassador. We are still figuring out who we are." She turned back to watch the sunset. "We will be here, raising our children, building our homes, living our lives. We will be the quiet neighbors who keep to themselves. We will trade with the Accord, cooperate with the Accord, support the Accord in every way we can." Telek studied her carefully. "And if another threat emerges? If another species decides to do what the Kethvari attempted?" Lisa smiled, and there was warmth in that smile, but also something deeper. Something that remembered the battles, the losses, the terrible choices that war demanded.
"How they know?"
"Then you know where to find us. All you have to do is ask." She paused, watching the last light fade from the sky. "The giant sleeps, Ambassador. We prefer it that way. We like the peace, the quiet, the simple pleasures of a life without war. We want our children to grow up believing that violence is a last resort, not a first response. But we never truly forget what we are. We never destroy the weapons, never abandon the training, never lose the instincts that kept our ancestors alive through 10,000 years of struggle. We keep it all buried deep, waiting for a day we hope will never come." She looked at him directly. "Because the universe is dangerous, Ambassador. It does not care about peace or kindness or good intentions. Sometimes the only way to protect the things you love is to become something terrible. We understand that. We accept that, and we are always ready for that." Telek was silent for a long moment. Then he bowed his head in respect. "I think I finally understand humanity," he said quietly. "You are not a peaceful species that learned to fight. You are a dangerous species that chooses to be peaceful. That is far more impressive." Lisa nodded. "We like to think so." She watched him return to his vehicle, watched him fly away into the darkening sky. Then she went inside, where a simple meal waited and a quiet evening stretched ahead. The war was over. The giant slept. But somewhere in the darkness between stars, humanity waited, ready to wake again, ready to fight again, ready to protect everything they loved no matter the cost, because that was what humans did. That was what they had always done, and that was what they would always do. The stars had always seemed peaceful to Commander Lisa Grant. She stood on the bridge of her ship, the horizon's edge, watching the endless darkness stretch out before her. For 20 years, she had sailed these cosmic waters, exploring distant worlds and making friends with alien species that her ancestors could never have imagined. The galaxy was a beautiful place, full of wonders that took her breath away. Every single day. Her ship was small compared to the massive vessels of the elder species. Just a simple exploration craft with 42 crew members who had become her family over the years. They mapped new star systems, studied strange phenomena, and served as ambassadors of goodwill for humanity. It was a good life. A peaceful life. Danny Vance sat at his communication station, his fingers moving lazily across the controls as he monitored the standard channels. He was young, barely 30 years old, with bright eyes and an easy smile that made everyone like him instantly. He had joined the crew 3 years ago, and Lisa had grown fond of him like a younger brother. "Quiet day," Danny said, stretching his arms above his head. "Nothing but routine traffic and a few cargo manifests." Lisa nodded, sipping the coffee that had gone cold in her hand. Quiet is good. Quiet means nobody is in trouble. The Galactic Accord had maintained peace for over 100,000 years. 12 elder species, each one ancient beyond human understanding, had created a system where war was almost unknown. Disputes were settled through negotiation. Resources were shared fairly. Civilizations grew and prospered without the need for weapons or armies. Humanity had joined this paradise. 300 years ago, when their first ships had stumbled into Accord space, the elder species had welcomed them with open arms, impressed by their curiosity and their willingness to learn. Humans had proven themselves to be excellent neighbors. They were helpful, friendly, always eager to contribute to the greater good. What the elder species did not know, what humanity had carefully hidden, was the truth of their past. The wars that had nearly destroyed their homeworld, the weapons they had created to kill each other, the darkness that lived in their hearts, held back only by their own choice. Lisa sometimes wondered if the elder species would still accept them if they knew the full story. But that was a question for philosophers and politicians. Her job was to explore, to discover, to represent the best of what humanity could be. The alarm that shattered the quiet was unlike anything she had ever heard. It was a sound that existed only in training simulations, sound that most people believed they would never hear in their lifetimes. Danny's face went pale as he stared at his console. "Commander," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Accord Central. It's tagged with a black seal." Lisa felt her blood turn to ice. Black seal transmissions were reserved for the most extreme emergencies. In 300 years of human membership in the Accord, not a single black seal message had ever been sent. "Put it through," she ordered, her voice steady, despite the fear growing in her chest. The face that appeared on the main screen was Ambassador Telek of the Vorn, an elder species known for their wisdom and calm demeanor. But there was no calm in Telek's eyes today. There was only terror. "To all members of the Galactic Accord," Telek said, his translator rendering his words in a flat, mechanical tone that somehow made them more frightening. "A species from beyond the charted regions has begun an invasion of our territory. They call themselves the Kethvari. In the past 30 days, they have completely destroyed 3 of our member civilizations. The Melody are gone. The Harvest Collective is gone. The Children of the Amber Star are gone. Billions of lives erased from existence." Lisa heard gasps from her crew members. The Melodia had been their friends. Just last year, she had attended a festival on their homeworld, dancing to music that seemed to speak directly to her soul. Now they were gone. "All of them," Telek continued, his voice breaking with emotion. "Our combined fleets have engaged the enemy 17 times. We have lost every battle. The Kethvari possess weapons we cannot understand and tactics we cannot counter. At our current rate of loss, the Accord will cease to exist within 2 years. The bridge was silent. Lisa could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. "The Council of Elders has convened an emergency session," Telek said. "We have reviewed all options available to us. We have studied the sealed histories of every member species, looking for anything that might help us survive this threat." And Lisa saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before in any elder species. It was hope, mixed with something that might have been fear. 300 years ago, when humanity joined the Accord, they submitted their complete historical records as required by our laws. We read those records. We thought we understood what they meant. We believed that humanity had evolved beyond their violent past, that they had become truly peaceful. Lisa's hands gripped the armrests of her command chair so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She knew what was coming. "We now understand that we were wrong," Telek said. "Humanity did not evolve beyond violence. They chose to set it aside. They buried their weapons, their tactics, their warrior instincts. but they never destroyed them. They kept everything, waiting for a day they hoped would never come. The ambassador took a deep breath. By unanimous vote of the Council of Elders, we are invoking Protocol 7 of the Human Admission Treaty. Authorization is hereby granted for end option protocols. Lisa closed her eyes. She had heard stories about Protocol 7 from her grandmother, who had heard them from her grandmother. It was supposed to be a myth, a legend, a story told to children to remind them of what they had once been. Telex spoke the final words of the transmission, words that would change the galaxy forever. Release the humanity. The screen went dark. Lisa sat in silence for a long moment, feeling the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. Around her, crew members exchanged confused glances. Most of them were too young to understand what they had just heard. Danny was the first to speak. "Commander, what does that mean? Release the humanity?" Lisa stood slowly, feeling older than she had ever felt before. She looked at her crew, at these good people who had spent their lives in peace, and she felt a deep sadness for what they were about to learn. "It means," she said quietly, "that the galaxy is about to discover who we really are. It means that 300 years of pretending is over. It means that humanity is going to war." She walked to the observation window and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an enemy was coming. An enemy that had destroyed civilizations without mercy. An enemy that thought it was unstoppable. They had no idea what they had awakened. Lisa Grant had spent her whole life being peaceful, being kind, being the best of what humanity could be. But deep inside her, in a place she rarely acknowledged, there was something else. Something ancient. Something dangerous. The giant was waking up. And Lisa could feel it stirring in her own blood. Admiral Kevin Cole had not slept in 3 days. He sat in the war room aboard Unity Station, surrounded by holographic displays that showed the slow death of everything he had sworn to protect. Red markers indicated enemy positions. Gray markers showed where civilizations used to exist before the Kethvari arrived. There were far too many gray markers. General Maria Santos stood beside him. Her arms crossed over her chest as she studied the tactical information. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. In public, she ran the Human Peacekeeping Corps, a friendly organization that helped settle disputes and provided disaster relief. In private, she commanded forces that officially did not exist. Director Paul Kim occupied the third chair at the table. He was responsible for strategic operations, which most people believed was a boring department that handled logistics and supply chains. The truth was far more interesting. "The Council has authorized end option," Kevin said, breaking the silence that had stretched for several minutes. "They actually did it." "I never thought they would," Maria let out a long breath. "They had no choice. 3 elder species gone in 30 days. The Kethvari are not here to negotiate. They are here to consume. Do the elders understand what they have asked for?" Paul asked. His voice was calm, almost amused. "They have read our histories, yes? But reading about human warfare and experiencing it are very different things." Kevin nodded slowly. "They think they understand. They believe that we were once violent and that we might still remember some useful tactics. They have no idea of the truth. The truth was something that humanity had protected for 300 years. When they had first joined the Accord, they had faced a choice. They could reveal their full capabilities and risk being seen as a threat. Or they could hide what they truly were and earn the trust of their new neighbors. They had chosen to hide. The war fleets were dismantled, their components recycled into civilian vessels. The weapons research facilities were closed, their files sealed behind encryption that only a handful of people knew how to break. The soldiers and generals retired from service, taking jobs as teachers and farmers and artists, but nothing was ever destroyed. Maria pulled up a file on the holographic display. The words Project Lazarus glowed in soft blue light. "Everything we put away